Why Japanese minimalists don't fear being alone. Have you ever wondered why some people seem completely comfortable eating alone at restaurants, traveling solo, or spending entire weekends by themselves without feeling even a little bit lonely? What if we told you there's an entire philosophy that turns being alone from something scary into something powerful? The Japanese secret to comfortable solitude. We've all been there, sitting alone at a coffee shop, scrolling through our phones because we don't want people to think we have no friends, avoiding that movie we really want to see because going to the cinema alone feels weird, saying yes to plans we don't even want to make just so we're not spending another Friday night by ourselves. But here's something interesting. In Japan, there's a growing movement of people who've completely flipped this script. They're not just okay with being alone, they actually embrace it. We're talking about Japanese minimalists, and their approach to solitude is changing how we think about loneliness, happiness, and what it really means to live a full life. The numbers tell us something fascinating too. According to recent surveys from Japan's Ministry of Health, around 38% of Japanese adults regularly engage in solo activities that people in other cultures might find unusual, like eating at restaurants alone or taking solo trips. And these aren't people who can't find company, they're choosing this lifestyle on purpose. So what do they know that we don't? Let's explore this together. Understanding the core philosophy. When we talk about Japanese minimalism, most people immediately think about empty rooms, white walls, and maybe a single perfectly placed plant. But that's just scratching the surface. The real heart of Japanese minimalism goes way deeper than just decluttering your closet. Japanese minimalists practice something called which roughly translates to meaningful space or pause. It's not about having less stuff for the sake of looking trendy on social media. It's about creating space in your life for what actually matters. And here's where it gets interesting. That includes creating space to be with yourself. Think about it this way. When was the last time you were truly alone with your thoughts? Not just physically alone, but mentally alone too. No podcasts playing, no TV in the background, no endless scroll through social media. For most of us, that's actually pretty uncomfortable. Our minds start racing. We get anxious. We feel like we should be doing something, anything to fill that silence. But Japanese minimalists see this differently. They view time alone not as emptiness that needs to be filled, but as fullness that needs to be experienced. There's this beautiful concept called Hitori Jikan, which literally means alone time or time for oneself. It's not treated as something sad or isolating. It's considered essential for personal growth and mental clarity. This philosophy connects deeply with Zen Buddhism, which has influenced Japanese culture for centuries. Zen teaches that understanding yourself requires quiet observation and reflection. You can't really know who you are if you're constantly surrounded by noise, other people's opinions, and endless distractions. Japanese minimalists have taken this ancient wisdom and applied it to modern life in really practical ways. The practice of intentional solitude. Now let's talk about how this actually looks in everyday life, because that's where things get really interesting. Japanese minimalists don't just tolerate being alone, they schedule it into their lives like it's an important appointment. Take the phenomenon of ohitori-sama culture, which literally means party of one. This isn't about being lonely or antisocial. In Japanese cities, you'll find restaurants with single-person seating, karaoke booths designed for solo singers, and even special solo travel packages. According to Japan's travel bureau, solo travel bookings have increased by nearly 50% over the past decade, and the majority are people choosing to travel alone despite having family and friends. What's happening here is something profound. These people have realized that being alone doesn't automatically mean being lonely. They're two completely different experiences. Loneliness is that heavy feeling when you wish you had connection but don't have it. Being alone is simply a state of being by yourself, and it can actually feel incredibly peaceful when you approach it with the right mindset. We see this practice showing up in small, everyday moments too. Many Japanese minimalists have morning routines where they spend at least 30 minutes alone before checking their phones or talking to anyone. They might sit quietly with tea, do some light stretching, or just watch the sunrise. Nothing Instagram-worthy or complicated, just simple, intentional time with themselves. There's also this practice called forest bathing, or Shinrin-yoku, that's become popular worldwide but originated in Japan. People spend time alone in nature, walking slowly and mindfully through forests. Research from Chiba University shows that just 15 minutes of forest bathing can reduce stress hormones significantly. But the key part? Most practitioners do this alone, using it as time for personal reflection rather than socializing. What Japanese minimalists understand is that quality matters more than quantity in relationships. They'd rather have a few deep, meaningful connections and plenty of time for self-reflection than constant, shallow interactions that leave them feeling drained. So why this reduces fear? So here's the big question. Why don't Japanese minimalists fear being alone? What's their secret? The answer is surprisingly straightforward, though it takes real practice to get there. When you regularly spend time alone, you become comfortable with your own company. You stop seeing yourself as incomplete without other people around. Think about friendships for a second. The best friendships aren't built on need, right? They're built on genuine connection and enjoyment. The same principle applies to your relationship with yourself. Japanese minimalists work on building a solid relationship with themselves through consistent practice. They get to know their own thoughts, feelings, and rhythms. They learn what genuinely makes them happy versus what they think should make them happy based on what everyone else is doing. This self-knowledge creates incredible confidence. There's this concept in Japanese psychology called jiko tekyo, which roughly translates to self-offering or self-fulfillment. It's the idea that you can provide yourself with emotional stability and contentment rather than constantly seeking it externally. When you develop this resource internally, being alone stops feeling threatening. Studies from Tokyo University's Department of Psychology found that people who regularly practiced intentional solitude showed 32% lower anxiety levels compared to those who constantly sought social engagement to avoid being alone. The researchers concluded that facing solitude head-on rather than avoiding it actually reduced fear and built emotional resilience. Another fascinating aspect is how this practice changes your social interactions. When you're comfortable being alone, you stop people-pleasing. You stop saying yes to things you don't want to do just to avoid being by yourself. Your relationships become more authentic because you're choosing them, not desperately clinging to them out of fear.
Japanese minimalists often describe feeling more present in their relationships because they've learned to be present with themselves first. They're not bringing that anxious, fearful energy into their friendships. They're showing up as complete individuals who enjoy connection but don't desperately need it for survival. Practical wisdom we can apply. The beautiful thing about this philosophy is that we don't need to move to Japan or completely overhaul our lives to benefit from it. We can start incorporating these principles right where we are, in small, manageable ways. Start by reframing how you think about alone time. Instead of seeing it as something that happens when plans fall through, treat it as valuable time that serves a purpose. Maybe that means protecting your Saturday morning for yourself, even when friends want to make brunch plans. Maybe it means taking yourself out for coffee once a week without bringing a book or your laptop, just you and your thoughts. Japanese minimalists also emphasize reducing decision fatigue and external noise. When you simplify your environment and schedule, you naturally create more space for reflection. This doesn't mean your home needs to look like a Zen temple. It might just mean decluttering your calendar of commitments that drain you rather than fulfill you. Another practice worth adopting is mindful observation. Japanese minimalists spend time noticing small details, how light falls through a window, the taste of their tea, the feeling of breathing. These simple observations anchor you in the present moment and make time alone feel rich rather than empty. We can also learn from their approach to technology. Many Japanese minimalists have specific times when they disconnect completely, not just putting the phone on silent, but actually putting it away where they can't see it. This creates genuine solitude rather than just physical aloneness while mentally remaining connected to hundreds of people through screens.
The goal isn't to become a hermit or avoid people. It's about building such a strong foundation with yourself that you can genuinely choose your connections rather than seeking them out of fear or habit. Finding peace in your own company. At the end of the day, Japanese minimalists have figured out something that our always connected, constantly busy culture often misses. Being comfortable alone isn't about isolation or giving up on relationships. It's about building the most important relationship you'll ever have, the one with yourself. When you're not afraid of being alone anymore, everything changes. You make better decisions because you're not just reacting to loneliness. You form healthier relationships because you're not desperate for connection. You discover what you actually enjoy, not just what fills the time. You find peace in ordinary moments that previously felt uncomfortable. This doesn't happen overnight. Japanese minimalists often spend years developing this comfort with solitude. But every small step counts. Every moment you choose to sit with yourself rather than immediately reaching for a distraction is practice. Every time you do something alone that you'd normally wait to do with others is building that muscle. So maybe it's time we stop treating being alone like it's something to fix or avoid. Maybe, just like Japanese minimalists have discovered, it's actually one of the greatest gifts we can give ourselves, the space to just be, without needing anyone else to validate our existence. The question isn't whether you can handle being alone, it's whether you're brave enough to find out who you really are when nobody else is watching.